to report on one of the most vexing challenges for Democrats in modern Washington and for President Biden. How do you deal with Fox News? The answer is actually complicated and exposes some of the debates on the left over whether to engage or fight an influential network that shapes so much political discourse, the right-wing opposition, and has been busted and sued over its rampant misinformation. Because here's the thing. While some progressives argue that establishment Democrats, and sometimes Biden and Obama, basically, they argue, have fallen into traps and misfires on this very issue. And they've undermined their own interests. For example, Fox draws influence from the perception that it is basically a news organization, like the AP or ABC News, when in reality, there has been evidence for years which shows Fox routinely broadcasts misleading and false information, which is different than most news organizations. More on the details of that in a moment. But if you're on the receiving end of that misinformation, if it's designed to take you down, you wouldn't want people to just take at face value the Fox materials they're getting, treat it as if it's totally comparable to any other channel like an ABC or NBC or what you're watching, MSNBC. Now, what I just said does sound obvious, but at that big press conference President Biden just had, he casually propped up and legitimized Fox News by likening it to just another news channel.
The American public are trying to sift their way through what's real and what's fake. The choice of what political coverage the voter looks to has as much impact on as what they believe. They go to get reinforced in their views, whether it's MSNBC or whether it's Fox.
That was the press conference by Joe Biden just last week, and it's not just him. Other top Democrats have used their megaphone to push virtually the exact same equivalence. Let me show you a perplexing riff from Barack Obama where he basically used that same sentence structure, treating Fox and Rush Limbaugh, which talked up racist birtherism against him, as just part of a larger media polarization.
There are a couple of things that, in my mind at least, contribute to our politics being more polarized than people actually are. The balkanization of the media means that we just don't have a common place where we get common facts and a common worldview the way we did 20, 30 years ago. And that just keeps on accelerating. I'm not the first to observe this, but you've got the Fox News, Rush Limbaugh folks, and then you got the MSNBC folks.
The way he puts it, his assertion is all those different folks can't agree on common facts. That's a false equivalence. You're witnessing the most powerful Democrats minimizing Fox's factual problems, which are different than, say, observing that there is opinion media out there. It weirdly legitimizes Fox News through that false equivalence. It's, just one more polarized source. Now, is this the whole story? Is this public concern about polarization in general a kind of political signal, perhaps, to swing voters and others, a quick way for someone like a Biden or an Obama to argue they're above the fray? Or does Joe Biden really believe this about Fox? Does he really believe that its most viewed anchors like Tucker Carlson and its reporters are just one more comparable source on a polarized spectrum? And will we ever know? I mean, we can't read minds, right? But we can hear hot mics, which is why this story tonight is actually extra interesting. Because on hot mics, of course, the mic catches something that a speaker meant to be private. And that's what happened to Joe Biden at the same presser where I showed you him making those remarks after getting a question from a Fox News reporter, whom he later called after the hot mic moment to try to make it right.
Do you think it places a political liability?
That's a great asset. More inflation. What a stupid son of a bitch.
Stupid son of a bitch. Mr. Unity strikes again.
Within about an hour of that exchange, he called my cell phone and he said, "It's nothing personal, pal."
Did he apologize?
He cleared the air, and I appreciated it. We had a nice call.
That's not an answer. Did he apologize? That doesn't sound like an apology.
He said, "It's nothing personal, pal."
Oh,
and I
pal.
told him that I
Okay,
appreciated
pal.
him reaching out.
Now, this whole exchange can play as something small, a gaffe over language, but as I just showed you, it's actually perhaps a window into Biden's private thinking. That maybe he actually thinks Fox is not the same, which is why he had those harsh words, but he has other reasons to echo a kind of conventional wisdom here. And this is a common refrain from certain voices. Take Bill Maher, who's often on the left on many issues. He had once said MSNBC's coverage of Chris Christie meant that it was time to look at yourself, MSNBC. You're turning into Fox News. Bridgegate has become your Benghazi. So this conventional wisdom keeps on cropping up. And yes, full disclosure, this is an MSNBC segment about the topic. But other independent journalists have roundly rejected that kind of claim. The Washington Post said Bill Maher misfires on saying MSNBC equals Fox. They went into the facts, noting that key Fox claims about Benghazi faced a punishing year and a half of challenge and debunkment, so the story itself was off base, while writing that MSNBC reporting on Bridgegate used on-the-record allegations of public officials, a core journalistic responsibility. And that's the point. This stuff matters. It affects politics and democracy. And I'm not here tonight to tell you what we think of our own work at this channel, and that wouldn't be evidence. I am here to report that this Biden-Obama-Maher equivalence does falter in the face of actual independent reporting. Take independent researchers. They found Fox is so routinely misleading that just watching it would make you less informed. And not just on hot political topics or your views of, say, Donald Trump. Fox viewers actually accept falsehoods about COVID more than people who got their news from literally anywhere else. I wonder why.
Unless you have an immune system that's compromised and you are older and you have other underlying health issues, you are not going to die 99% from this virus.
The experts still think that parents should trust them and inject their kids with an experimental drug.
These are, after all, experimental drugs, and they're behaving like it.
The Cleveland Clinic said that if you had COVID-19, you don't need any vaccine.
No one should get boosted. No one should get double boosted. They are a dangerous and ineffective product.
So maybe it doesn't work, and they're simply not telling you that.
We picked those misleading claims precisely because they're not even about politicians and because this is much larger than one media company and another, which is kind of how Biden put it, or me talking about somebody across the street. We are talking about information that affects what happens to people, including their own viewers, whether they get sick or potentially die in ways they didn't have to. Those were misleading claims pushed over and over, and recent studies found that kind of repetition made those Fox viewers more likely to be misinformed and act in ways that were dangerous to themselves and worsen the pandemic. Or take the science and how human activity is making the Earth warmer. We know that it is. But if you watched Fox regularly, you might not, because about half of Fox viewers falsely think the Earth is just getting warmer by itself.
They want you to be really afraid of climate change.
Climate change, they said, caused these fires. They didn't explain how exactly that happened.
Using the deadly tornado tragedy across the Midwest to push their far-left climate alarmism agenda.
We're not seeing any significant increase in extreme weather events affecting people's lives.
The severity has been on the decline.
I think it was one of the coldest Julys we've had in some while. I don't know if that's going to really fly with climate change.
Global cooling.
Right, yeah, global cooling.
Climate change panic is so overblown that it is hyperbolic and silly.
Kids have a lot of things to worry about. Climate change should not be one of them.
Fox has been doing this for years in a way that is fundamentally different from other media and other even opinionated media. Now, there were those public service announcements that said, the more you know. Remember that? Well, back in 2012, this is a while back, a study showed Fox viewers were also less informed than people who literally said they consumed no news at all. Think about that. You spend your time watching something called Fox News, and you end up statistically less informed than people who don't watch the news, period. This is not journalism, what they're doing, what those results show. It's different than most other outlets. Take the Independent Pointer Institute, which found Fox and MSNBC were not the same thing. While both did have strong viewpoints, It was Fox that spun its own reality. And many media outlets do face all kinds of lawsuits. We report on them. Fox, though, tends to lose or settle quite a bit of their lawsuits. They had to settle with the family of a former Democratic operative, Seth Rich, because they had falsely linked him to a WikiLeaks email dump and falsely suggested that somehow Democrats or the Clintons' leaks would have been linked to that tragic death. It's a specific example. I'm sure it was, based on what we've learned, horrific for the family, and it was false enough that they had to settle the case. At other times, Fox's falsehoods affect the entire republic we're living through and its problems. There were a lot of misleading suggestions about that 2020 election, even though the network's own decision desk counted up what everyone else found, the ballots that Biden won.
Some of the most brazen acts of voter fraud to date.
There actually is evidence of fraud.
Sworn affidavit saying people are forging signatures.
Tampering allegations to the dead people voting.
How many dead people voted?
Interesting stories about dead people voting. Wow, amazing. What free and fair elections we all have confidence in.
A corrupt, stolen election.
The election was stolen from a president.
Another independent study found Fox cast doubt on the results about 800 times. They counted just in 2 weeks after the election. So that affects Fox viewers as well. A poll found 82% of Fox viewers falsely and wrongly believe Trump won. That may be a contribution of both Trump's statements, the Republican Party, and Fox itself. Dominion Voting Systems is currently suing Fox for defamation because it says many guests were allowed to repeat blatantly false claims attacking their voting machines. This is not about opinion, which, as a free speech person and a former First Amendment practicing lawyer, I will defend, including their opinions. This is about an entity that has news in the title but continues to make demonstrably false claims about all these issues. We've covered the COVID angle before, and that is a danger to Fox viewers. People who don't watch Fox at all may have better information. When we report on that, we report on it because it's important and also out of direct concern about how a company that has its own vaccine policies and uses a lot of CDC-style rules to keep its own workers safe is telling its viewers false things that might endanger them. And yet, we turn back to the news hook, as we call it in our business, of what Joe Biden was talking about. Why so many powerful Democrats would seem to give Fox cover with that equivalence, even though its own viewers are more susceptible to believing false theories on all sorts of issues, including the January 6th insurrection. I should note there is a wider debate in the Democratic Party, which did ultimately reject Fox as a debate host in 2020, after having previously given the channel that honor to navigate and referee Democratic Party debates in previous cycles. This is a debate within the party. There are Democrats who either truly believe or seem to accept the conventional wisdom that Fox is like other media, or maybe they're trying to score some sort of centrist points by saying that. And then there are others, including what we see in a newer generation, that's so concerned about the cost, real world of this propaganda, that they see Fox and some other right-wing media as far more sinister. Take the Queensbridge artist Nas, who wrote a whole song warning about this channel, lamenting, quote, "Sly Fox, Cyclops, locked in an idiot box. What's a Fox characteristic? Censored misinformation, overstimulation." And Nas's advice was, with Fox feeding us toxins, quote, "You better watch what you're watching." It's an interesting take from an artist who was clearly concerned about what he called Fox propaganda. Now, people can decide for themselves whether they agree more with that or with this recurring equivalence of two presidents.
You've got the Fox News, Rush Limbaugh folks, and then you got the MSNBC folks.
The choice of what political coverage the voter looks to has as much impact on as what they believe, whether it's MSNBC or whether it's Fox.